Thank you all so much for coming and for bringing this beautiful film to Toronto.
Peck, Matt Kay, Bobby Johansson, Mark Amiucci, Joe Sperger, Tim Davis, Chris Wood, Keith Hirschka,
He's gonna do this all night. Cut him off here.
Ron Fair, Troy James Miller.
It used to be reading the phone book and now it's reading credits. Amazing. Marielle, I want to start with you and just get your thoughts about what it was like to begin the process of unpacking this icon on screen. Of course, it began with an article and there was a screenplay to work from, but there's something very visual about the film, and of course, Fred Rogers was a TV star. So what was that like in terms of that process of turning this into a fiction film with Tom and Lee?
I mean, I think the first step was really Jody Lee Lipes, our amazing cinematographer, and I sitting down and talking about how we wanted it to feel. I kind of always talk about the technical decisions I'm going to make from an emotional point of view. That's how I've always been as a director. And we knew that there's something about watching the original program of Mr. Rogers that just, it makes your stomach hurt with that feeling of nostalgia. You see original footage and your heart kind of leaps. And when we discovered using these old tube cameras, we felt like it created a look that gave us that same feel. And every decision that we made through making the movie was with the hope that we were going to authentically recreate this world and find a way to make the audience feel close to it, and not create a distance. So everything from the miniatures to the tube camera, the way we filmed the show, to recreating the set, but also in all of our performances that these wonderful actors gave, and the way that the scenes were shot, the purpose was to make the audience feel it and to be close to it.
And Tom Hanks, because we have two Toms on stage. I want to ask you about unpeeling this icon, about where you started in terms of creating your portrayal of Fred Rogers. Was there a thing that you started from?
This really came about because Mari and I have been searching for something that we could possibly do together. And this was one of the screenplays that had existed in Hollywood and around the industry for a very long time. When did you guys first start putting it out?
10 years ago. 10 years ago.
All right, so I read it probably about 8 years ago. For the first time, as an example of this, you can control this if you want to, but I honestly did not know what it was. Because of the nature of the Lloyd Vogel and the story with his father. When Mari called and said, we have this thing, and I said, well, I read that a long time ago, but let me take a look at it now because I'll be seeing it somewhat through her eyes. The thing about Fred is he's instantaneously to almost every adult in America. He is one of two things: a saint or a fraud. And that juxtaposition of, and I think maybe even Tom experienced that when he was first meeting him. He said, you can't be both. You have to be one or the other, because that's the way movie life works. It is very analog. And in order to get to that place where I think somehow we never make fun of Fred, we slow down in order to listen to him, and even some of the physical aspects of it was always going to be, I think, deconstructing the myth of it in order to show that he's a regular guy who went out to Chinese food, but at the same time, in scene after scene after scene, there is this mystery of what's his motivation here? Is it because of commerce? No. He was the least commercial performer or creator on television. He never sold his toys. He never had commercials. And I think one of the most wonderful things, too, is that he was actually an ordained minister who never mentioned God on his show. So somewhere in the midst of all of that is I think, two things: a behavior that has to be found, but also the prism through which Mari and her crew shot this had to be, in this weird way, this this video camera process of this cheap little set out of Pittsburgh that looks exactly as we remember it. And then at the same time, this guy who is not dressed in his blue shoes, but he's walking around town in New York City and riding the subway, and he's a regular guy. And yet, he's Mr. Rogers. So,
I just want to add, because that was so beautifully said, but one conversation I had with Joanne Rogers over the course of preparing for this movie was we had heard, and Noah and Micah had told me, you know, nobody likes it nobody from Fred's camp of people likes it when we refer to him as a saint. And it was sort of the first thing people would say is, oh man, he was a saint. And she was the one who really said, you know, if you think of him as a saint, he's not accessible. It's something that we can't attain if we're viewing him as a saint. And you need to know he wasn't. He was a person. He walked this earth like the rest of us, and he worked very hard every day to be the person he wanted to be. And we basically took those lines that she said directly and had Joanne in the movie say them. And that was important, I think, for building the character as well. Is this was a human being. This was somebody with a full life and an entire, as complex as the rest of us, but it's easy to think of him as just this saintly, wonderful man who didn't even have to work at it, which is just not true.
The other element that I think brings his character so much into relief is the character that you play, Matthew, and also that you were, I suppose. And are you still? And I wanted to ask you about that contrast, you know, between where you came from as a somewhat cynical, as we see in the movie, magazine writer, and what you saw in Fred Rogers, and how the two of those people brought each other into relief in a way.
I think the thing that was special about my experience with Fred was not so much that I saw something in him, but that he saw something in me. He had that ability and he had that determination to see what was good and worthwhile and worth bringing out in people, and then set about sort of relentlessly achieving that. I mean, that's one of the things that I really, really love about the movie is that it captures that about Fred. It captures his discipline. It captures his sheer relentlessness. I mean, I over the summer, I found some emails from that first year when I was first being friends with Fred. He sent me, in the course of just a couple of months, he sent me 70 emails that were, I mean, you know, they were long. Yeah, he had a lot to say and was determined to say it. And with me, I believe that he saw somebody who really needed to be trusted, because I didn't trust myself. And Fred gave me that, and it was, I mean, it's 20 years later now, and it is one of the great lucky breaks of my life that Fred, I was sent to do a profile of Fred Rogers. He assessed me far quicker than I assessed him. And, you know, 20 years later, we're talking about it. It's, you never know how life works, but it really works well sometimes.
What was this like for you? You play a character who is, at least initially, pretty tough to like, but opens up in really remarkable ways.
Well, I mean, you know, as an actor, it's sorry, it sounds like a cliche, but it is a part you relish when you read, because the journey is so great, but, you know, not certainly without its difficulties or its complexity. So it was something I was instantly, you know, drawn to. And I was worried because Tom has incredible hair.
I'm going to ask the other actors up here, Susan and Chris. Chris, maybe we'll start with you in terms of playing the father character. And so many characters in movies have dads who they struggle against, and you just kind of put it all out there. You are that dad that... you know, it's very hard for a son to live with. And I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about portraying the father in this film.
Yeah, I think it kind of involved a lot of dreaming of what is this character about out of New Jersey. And my wife and I spent about 6 years living in New Jersey, so the characters are kind of familiar. But this Jerry, I think he was trapped in the Rat Pack era and loved his karaoke, and had a new woman in his life that was constantly aware of how he treated his family and what he walked away from. And I think she worked on him, and I think Jerry was rather resistant to it, but just having talked to Tom, I realized there were some parallels in the relationship to the father that I didn't realize. I thought this part of the story was totally fictitious, but apparently not so.
All right. And Susan, you are also part of this ensemble, which is really about everyone kind of growing together. Your characters may be a little bit more evolved than some of the others, perhaps. Can you talk a little bit about your role in this particular story?
Good for her. It's interesting, right? These new phases of life. You get comfortable in a certain phase of life. You think you have it kind of managed. You know your career, your husband's career, your roles, and then, you take the next step when a baby enters, your family, and then things kind of get tossed around, and you try to figure out, well, what are the new roles, and how much am I still my old self, and all these things, and a lot of times I find, we all know when it rains it pours, right? So this happens, and then all of a sudden the father comes back into the light, and there's all these things that are like stirring up something that's riling up what was peaceful, what was sort of comfortable. And then enter Mr. Rogers, who is someone who gets them to see things from a new perspective and sort of embrace change and the discomfort of change. And not to say that discomfort is wrong or don't feel it or hurry up to get out of discomfort, but what is it to sit in it and say, okay, let me try to feel what this is, and then see how it evolves, and to have patience with myself, with the people around me. So that I think she's also part of that, though she may be, evolved and not dealing with what Lloyd is dealing with. There's still this idea of what it is to be patient with yourself and to allow things to evolve and to allow discomfort and to know that that's all part of it. I love that, she, like me, loves Mr. Rogers. You know what I'm saying? Like backstage, I was singing along with the song and everything. I remember all of this. And
I want to ask a little bit about loving Mr. Rogers, because I remember when the first image from this film was put online, and everybody kind of just breathed a sigh of relief that you were going to be playing Mr. Rogers. You had managed to cast Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers. Collective shoulders went down. We felt like we are in safe hands now. And I want to ask the two of you, Marielle and Tom, about what that was. What is the thing that Tom Hanks has that made him perfect for this role?
Can I interject for 1 second?
All right.
As someone who's neither from the United States or Canada, when you tell people, they go, oh, what's the film about? You go, in a very broad stroke, well, it's not, if you just want to get out of the room, I go, oh, it's about Mr. Rogers. And they go, oh. And they go, who plays Mr. Rogers? You go, Tom Hanks. And they go, oh. It elicits the same sound. Rogers and Hanks elicit the same sound.
Talking about this movie a lot in the last few days, and I do think there's this kind of thing that happens where everyone goes, oh yeah, I love Tom Hanks, I love Mr. Rogers, this makes perfect sense. And now you guys have all seen it, you've seen this performance, and that's not an easy performance to give. That's not something that Tom just wants to say. And it's people kind of started when he's Mr. Rogers. effort, in the same way that Mr. Rogers gave effort to be Mr. Rogers and to live his life the way he wanted to live his life, there is effort that went into this performance, and there was an incredible amount of trust, and it has to feel naked to give that type of performance where you are so raw and you're being asked to be so vulnerable. And what Mr. Rogers was present and open in every moment. I mean, that's a hard thing to do for anybody. And so I worry because we have this way we talk about this, like, oh yeah, Tom Hanks, Mr. Rogers makes sense. And I'm like, no, that's actually not giving credit to the transformative performance that you all have seen.
Can I just do a quick children's story? One of the reasons, I guess I do, is it was a night shoot. We were in the back lot of Warner Brothers, where they don't actually make a lot of movies anymore. They had rainbirds and wind machines set up because we were going to be shooting a scene in the torrential downpour. There were all the actors who were dressed in black, and they were carrying umbrellas. And I entered the shot from the end of the street with a submachine gun, and I butchered 12 guys and shot Paul Newman dead. And I thought, God, I hope I get to play Mr. Rogers someday. So I'd like to think that between the executioner and the Green Mile and the Nazi killer and Saving Private Ryan, it was all leading up.
We're here? Okay, yes, on the aisle, go ahead. Okay. Tom Janot's chosen expression. Go ahead. Yes.
What was your relationship with Mr. Rogers? Did you watch his show? And what did you learn from him doing this movie?
I was too old, excuse me, I was too old. I remember Mr. Rogers as being this odd black and white show on the TV channel we never tuned in when I was growing up, and the puppets, their mouths didn't move, so I didn't know who was talking necessarily. Because when you're 11 years old, you're already piped into what the logic is of being entertained. That it has to hit beats and it has to do something very specific and it's got to move fast. So I just thought it was this weird kind of like black and white community college kind of like production. And made absolutely, well, let me tell you, Mr. I never understood what was going on. In the course of watching hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of Mr. Rogers, and look, let's remember there is a fabulous documentary called Won't You Be My Neighbor? That was a font of information. My relationship to him now is that I wish that when my kids were younger, and one of my kids is here now, I wish when my son was 3 years old that he and I sat down and watched a half hour of Mr. Rogers a week, because I would have better understood the role of a parent in saying to their children, it's all right if you're sad. Because so many parents say, don't be sad. Oh, this will, you'll forget it. Let's divert your attention so you'll be all right over here. The idea that Mr. Rogers was explaining to confused beings how the world works because they actually had no impression on how the world works. I think that ends up being something that literally no one else does on television, and no one else has done that really outside the media. It's almost anywhere. Not to take, our kids watch a lot of cartoons, but there is this age when they are, as Mr. Rogers himself read, most kids at the age of 2.5 wonder if they are going to get sucked down the drain when they unplug the bathtub. This is a genuine fear that a lot of kids have, and if I had known, it is physically impossible for you to get sucked down the drain. And you got to do it at that speed.
And he wrote a song about it.
And he wrote a song. And also, that's got the great. Should I tell this? When my wife and I get into it, when we're done with whatever subject matter that got us all heated up, I'm now driving her insane because I sing. Well, honey, it's It's good to talk. It's good to share the things that you feel. It's good to talk.
It was our joke on set. Our AD would say, because of the song "It's Good to Talk," which we all just loved, it would always be, "It's good to shoot. It's good to shoot another scene. It's good to..." Everything was, that was all the whole shoot.
You can turn, just if you're ever confused, just take a reading from the book of Fred Rogers, and all will be well, or you'll get to the next place.
Thank you. Balcony, give me a question. One question from up the balcony, please. Who's got one?
I've got one.
All right.
The script seems perfect. How come it floated around Hollywood for 10 years?
Script seems perfect. How come it floated around Hollywood for years?
It wasn't so much that it floated around Hollywood for 10 years, but it took a long time to get made because we were working with the estate. We're very, very protective of Fred Rogers and his likeness. Like Tom said, he never sold any toy. He never did any sort of endorsements. And we had sort of written a script and gotten it to them, and they were like, "Well, we love you guys. Script needs some work." And so they opened up the archives to us, and we got to read all the letters that the ones that Fred wrote Tom. It's a little invasive, but we read them all, before he did. And it was like, oh, this is amazing. This guy is actively participating in not only this journalist's life, but in hundreds of other people's lives on a daily basis. And so we had to be very careful. And I think we were also, growing in our own lives and writing about our own kids and our own insecurities about being parents. And it took a long time. And it took us a long time to find Mari. And when we found Mari, it happened. It happened.
I think for us, for Noah and I, we've both had the experience of being terrified fathers of young children and staring at our infant girls and wondering, what the hell are we supposed to do? How are you supposed to raise a child today? And looking for answers, looking for any kind of authority figure. Little kids are just full of just raw feelings, and a lot of the impetus for the story to begin with came from 10 years ago when Noah's daughter was 2 and being a 2-year-old maniac, and he played a YouTube video of Mr. Rogers.
And I was looking for help. Let's be honest, she was so strong-willed.
And she calmed down, and Noah came into our office and he was like, "Who is this warlock?"
I discovered a wizard that speaks toddler.
And then in the time that it took us to get things right, to work with the estate, to build this community around this project, I had a daughter, and of course we raised her on the Daniel Tiger cartoon, the Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, the cartoon version of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And so when we were on set, I would FaceTime with her. We were shooting in Pittsburgh, and for her to have an interaction with the puppeteer playing Daniel, it blew her mind. And she, you would think that she'd be very happy, but she burst into tears. But for me, it was a real parent win.